right. Welcome to the discussion session for Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. Item one, Manager McGill, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tonight's agenda is relatively light. We have the introduction of an ordinance to amend the Mount Lebanon Code to include newly enacted ordinances or amendments to existing ordinances enacted since January 25th of 2022. This is the codification that we go through annually so that all of our ordinances are in one location. We also have the consideration for the approval of the DeLonga consolidation plan. The plan will consolidate two parcels that are located on Rob Hollow Road. We'll have the considerations of commencement of pension benefits for a recently retired employee, Amy Kostelich. Amy was the police secretary for a number of years. And then finally, the consideration to purchase outfield and backstop fence to replace existing fence at Dixon Field. And I should mention that I want to personally thank Dan Miller, Representative Miller, for his efforts in obtaining that grant for $50,000. The municipality will, as a result of the bids that came in at a little bit less than that, have no financial outlay to replace the that existing outfield and backstop fence. So.
Great, thank you. Next up, Green Light Go applications, and we have someone, Gateway Engineers here. Me, take it away.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Presumably you got all of the information in my memo prior to the meeting, but I think maybe the best time to share is just a kind of an overview map of the intersections that we're looking at. I'll touch a little bit on the program itself. The Green Light Go program is now in its 8th cycle. It was originally a new program back in 2014, and it was part of the 2013 Act 89 transportation bill in the state. It's a state grant. Originally, the legislation was written that it was a 4-year program, funded certain amounts for each one of those first 4 years. The program was extremely successful, but also the amount of money that was allotted for those 4 years, the amount of applications and funding requested that came in never actually reached that amount. So they kept doing one cycle at a time. So every year we think it's the last year, and then they announce that there's another cycle. So we had originally done, I don't know if any of you might have been here. I'm not sure who else was on the commission, but maybe 5-6 years ago, we had done a series of applications in the municipality. We replaced 3 signals in total. Like there were 3 really old traffic signals. We did full replacements. And then we also did equipment upgrades at like 40 other intersections. In total, I think the project was like $1.2 million. And it was a 20% local match. So the 80% of that funding came from the state.
I think that was my first year.
18.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So for anybody who's listening or anybody who doesn't know, every traffic signal in the Commonwealth, well, almost every traffic signal in the Commonwealth is owned, operated, and maintained by the municipality that it's in. PennDOT does not own or maintain any traffic signal. So when you come across a really outdated and old signal, which we don't have a lot of in Mount Lebanon because you guys keep ahead of it, but in some communities that maybe don't have the funding sources to update them, that's typically why. They're expensive to update, and municipalities, that's not usually at the top of their list in their budget. So this program has been very successful in that the state's essentially saying, we're going to pay 80 cents on the dollar for these signal upgrades. And it's been very helpful to a lot of communities. So that's where we're at. So that was a number of years ago we did that. So now that they're doing another cycle, which again, we don't know year to year if they're going to do another cycle. We worked back in October once they announced a program, worked with Manager McGill, Rudy, public works staff to identify maybe areas where we could use some upgrades or where equipment might be outdated. And that's ultimately what we identified in the documentation that I sent to you. This cycle, last cycle was the first one. This is the second one where PennDOT is actually requiring a preliminary pre-application scoping form to be submitted so that they kind of have an idea and they can vet the projects. In the past, it was municipalities would just put their application together and submit them, and you assume you were going to get it, or you would find out that you got it. So this helps a little bit in multiple ways. Number one, it helps us hone in a little bit earlier on what the costs might be. In the early cycles of the program, a lot of municipalities were doing these applications on their own and didn't really understand what the costs were. And the way the program's written is it's a 20% match on the actual amount that's awarded. And then anything over that was the responsibility of the municipality. So in the early cycles of this contracts and bids were coming in that were so much higher, and then the local municipal burden was much higher than anticipated. So PennDOT's kind of refined that, and they built in some contingencies and different percentages for things to kind of boost up the application number. So the number that we have in here, when I get down to it, I think is high, based on my recent experience with similar types of upgrades. But I think that's a good thing, because ultimately you'll be responsible for 20% of what that final number is.
Better that you overshoot than undershoot.
Correct. Otherwise, if we undershoot, then you're responsible for anything else.
Before we get into the number details, could you explain maybe some of the benefits of upgraded signals?
Several. One is that older signals, now, we don't have, one of the upgrades we're gonna do here is for this specific reason, but the technology is ever changing. Becoming better and better, controllers are becoming more capable of more things. Detection's becoming better and better and more capable and having less problems. And ultimately the idea of all this higher technology is to reduce delays, emissions. I mean, everything associated with efficiencies of traffic signals kind of impacts all of those things. And older technology, older detection, older controllers, they're not supported anymore by the manufacturers. So if it goes bad and you don't have a spare controller or a spare part that fits into there, you're stuck paying for a whole new controller because the manufacturers don't even make the parts anymore for some of the older stuff. So the benefit is you can stay up to date with the technology that's there, and get equipment that's supported and of the latest technology and capabilities for 20 cents on a dollar.
In addition to that, Mike, you and I had a conversation. The commission last year passed a complete streets policy.
Yep.
A lot of the upgrades that I'm seeing here relate specifically to accessible pedestrian signals
Right.
and upgrades to improve pedestrian safety.
Correct. Yep. So let me dive a little bit into what we're going to apply for. Assuming everybody here says, let's go for the application. We have submitted the scoping form with the minor details. There's a lot more that goes into the actual application, and it's been given the thumbs up by central office and PennDOT District 11. So we originally had two separate projects that we were going to apply for. First one I'll start with is the 7 intersections in red up here, which is the Uptown District from Shady Drive, east and west, down to Castle Shannon Boulevard. That project was going to be to upgrade the push buttons and pedestrian detection at the intersection through the business corridor. This initially came to light, well, years and years ago, when PennDOT came through here, it was identified that, hey, those push buttons are all the old mechanical style push buttons, the big metal ball that, you can almost hear it squeak when you push it. Jason, the former electrician in-house, had all the parts, had all the spares that were easy to maintain. He requested that they not be updated when PennDOT came through with their 3R project in 2015 or whatever year it was. So they stayed that way. Fast forward to June of this year, let's say September, we had a resident who's new to the community who moved near the business district who is visually and hearing impaired. So we had to set up and have a translator and someone who could speak sign language and could translate what he was requesting. Came to the traffic board and said he frequents the business district and wants to be independent and be able to cross these intersections, but has no idea if he pushed the button, if the controller knows he pushed the button, has no idea when it's time for him to walk, when he has a walk signal, because it's both visually and hearing impaired.
Yeah, there's nothing, okay.
There's neither. So
It doesn't really work anyway, but that's.
So that program we were proposing as a separate application for multiple reasons that I'll get into. One, it's a little bit of a different project. The APS is what it's called Accessible Pedestrian Signal. The technology and the push buttons and are essentially made for visually and hearing impaired, or both. So if you push the button, it's got a little red indication in the middle of it, so that when you push it, it's been activated. So that if you're hearing impaired but not visually impaired, okay, that I pushed it. What you have out there now with the mechanical push buttons, you probably see people just sitting there, keep punching it because they have no idea.
I do.
Why won't it turn? Well, this one, I would liken it to you're waiting for an elevator, you push the up or the down button, and if the light inside it doesn't work, you just keep pushing it. So the light would be for the hearing impaired, but then the push button itself also can have a tone to it so that when you push it for the visually impaired, it'll give you a little beep. So no, that kind of takes care of both of those things.
So you know that it.
Correct,
that
so
it's
you
been
know you've
pushed,
activated
And
it.
then when it's activated,
Correct.
so you can cross.
And
it's a
again, we're
different-
doing a little bit more research on what the options are as far as the notification for.
You want
when you
the
have-
arrows too. You don't want it to be, so you can
Correct,
feel
There-
the arrow going this way
Yes,
as opposed to.
and
one
there
going that
are,
way. It has
there
to be
are a lot
raised.
of different options, but
Yeah.
as long as they meet certain guidelines, state guidelines and federal guidelines, we're gonna make sure that we have everything that's needed. It's a little bit of a different need if you have just a visually impaired
Right.
pedestrian. It's a little bit of a different need if you have just a hearing impaired pedestrian. This particular pedestrian is both.
And
so
they
we
have
wanna
to be
make
up
sure-
enough, so if you're in a
Yeah, we want
wheelchair,
to make
you
sure
can
that it has the capability for this.
Is there a vibro tactile?
Yeah, that's essentially what they're actually talking about.
There is,
Yeah.
they have ones that have like an arrow,
Mhm.
you can actually feel the
The
arrow.
physical arrow.
So you know which way you're pushing the button to cross as opposed to one that goes this way, like if you're at an intersection.
You know when it activates because it vibrates or it does
Yeah,
something,
you
so
can hear it.
you can feel it if you can't hear.
Correct.
And they have to be mounted low enough for wheelchair accessibility.
So what we can do, and actually, if the funds get awarded and it moves into, permitting and design. We'll specify.
Yeah.
Everything that it has to provide. We can't specify necessarily a specific push button, but there are
Right.
requirements and then the contractor will have to find something that meets that spec. So it's gonna, but this one in particular is gonna be able to accommodate both hearing and visually impaired pedestrians. The reason we were proposing.
The intersection like Fifth and Craig in Oakland is like a cuckoo sound.
Yes.
Is that would also be part of the spec?
No, that's a little bit, I mean, that is a type of APS, but that's different than what the request was here. That we did just install at Cedar and Cochrane because there was a visually impaired resident who requested that. And then instead of the cuckoo sound, that one actually speaks,
Tells you to
cross Cedar Boulevard,
You can cross.
cross, or what, you can, there's different kinds of.
Right,
capabilities.
okay.
The one at,
St. Bernard.
the one at St. Bernard's that being installed now, but the old signal that's still operating has the cuckoo.
Okay.
So there, that just shows you kind of the range of the options that we'll have at our
Okay,
disposal.
right.
The reason we, go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say. It's kind of like, at least for me instinctively, it's like signage. I don't want 50 different kinds of sign. I don't want 50 different kinds of signal tools. What's the best practice? And let's get on a pattern, recognizing that there's an additional cost, I'm sure.
Sure.
But, we've just said there are 3 different intersections, there are 3 different kinds. It's like, yeah, that resident had this dynamic and that resident had that dynamic, but I don't know who's moving in next. Or 10 years from now. So how do we say, this is the pattern that we want to establish and maintain it going forward?
I'm trying to get some consistency.
Yeah, because I don't
It's a cuckoo
know.
Here and it's an alarm clock there and who knows what.
Well, for this particular system, the entire uptown business district will be the same.
Nice. It'll be the same.
So the reason we were initially proposing separate, we did 2 scoping forms for it is because when I went to a traffic conference up at State College in December, I met with essentially the head of traffic signals at PennDOT to ask the question. When we had the resident come to the traffic board requesting that these signals be
Right.
updated to APS signals. I couldn't find any documentation on what the legal responsibility of the municipality was. I didn't know if, hey, as soon as a disabled person requests this, the municipality does my client have to immediately install these? What do they have to do?
Right, sure.
What he said is, when it comes down to something like that, the requirement of PennDOT is that, number one, you have a plan to replace them. So in this case, the plan would be, we're seeking grant money for it. And when we get the grant money, we're gonna replace them. But what he also said is that across the Commonwealth, PennDOT has a separate set of money that's specific for this type of upgrade, but it's federal money. And he said that he's had success in areas in getting these upgrades fully funded with the federal money through PennDOT. So I said, why don't we keep them separate? And if the federal money is not available, we find out if federal money is not available, then we'll move forward with the Green Light Go. They said it would be easier on their end to just include everything in one, and then if the federal money becomes available, then the scope of our grant funding will just be increased.
Yeah.
So that's why they were kept as one.
Okay.
So that's project one was the 7 that you see in red here.
Okay, 7 and 1, 7 in red, all of those signals will be the same for pedestrians from the pedestrian experience.
Correct. And then I'll add one more, the blue, which is the intersection of Washington and Cochrane, will also get that.
That same
APS.
treatment. that
Correct.
Same
He
APS.
also utilizes that intersection.
That's such a hard intersection. I know you know that. For
Yeah.
pedestrians,
Yeah, that one has an exclusive ped phase though
Yeah.
as well. So if you do
Yes,
push the
yeah.
button
Yeah, it's.
and wait, so when you're supposed to wait, you're gonna get the walk all by
hopefully you
yourself.
don't get hit.
If you don't get impatient, start pounding on the button. So then the second project, which is ultimately gonna be one big project, is an upgrade to the detection. The vehicular detection at the 7 red intersections. And then the one outlier, the pink one here at the bottom, which is Washington. I'm sorry.
It's not,
It's not Washington Cochrane.
No.
It's Washington Woodhaven.
okay,
That's on me.
all right.
Okay, there's a lot.
It's, the location is correct, the wording is incorrect. I Copy paste and change the
Yeah.
color and didn't change the word. So I'll start with that intersection because it's easiest, the advanced detection. I don't want to get too much into the weeds. You have stop bar detection, which is a detector
Yes.
that says when a car comes at a side street, it has a stop bar. Advanced detection is a further out detection and the distance that it's out ultimately depends on what the speed limit is and things like that. So that as a vehicle is approaching a particular speed, the goal of it is to recognize that a car is coming and not get it stuck in that position where you go and it turns yellow, you go, do I speed up or do I slow? That's called the dilemma zone. So it's meant to reduce that dilemma zone and identify if there are still cars approaching from a further distance.
Good.
So that's advanced detection. At that intersection, it's the only one left in the municipality where the advanced detection is actually loop detections that are cut into the pavement. Which for the oldest kind of detection that, you know, everybody did 25 years ago before you had video and radar. So that's the only one that has loop detection, which is wires cut into the ground and they fail when weather and freeze thaw and they break and then they don't work. And you don't know that they don't work because there's nothing that tells you that they don't work. So that one, the standalone at that intersection is to put 2 advanced radar detectors for the approaching Washington Road traffic. That's why it's pink.
But I
It's
can
own-
know that as long as we take off the no right turn from Crestview Manor onto Washington Road. Stupidest sign in the world. There is, you can see it, honest to God, Jason, I run it all the time, and my husband's like, you're gonna get us arrested, I'm like, fine, let them arrest me, I'm gonna go.
So the traffic board meets the first Wednesday of every month.
Yes, I don't care.
Okay.
Traffic board meets first Wednesday of every month.
Right, Phil.
That area is.
Appreciate that.
So
Commissioner Silverman's always there,
Yeah.
hoping somebody else comes.
We did just speak of that, we have on our to-do list, what is the question about the left turn
Yes.
arrow? Been waiting till traffic volumes
They're
increase.
normal now. Time to-
So when we're
Yep.
changing that signal, we'd be looking at that question as well.
Yes.
What, I missed that, Steve. What was your question?
Then what happened is that the complaint I get from folks that they're on Washington Road leaving Galleria. And they're going to make the left-hand turn onto, let's say, Woodhaven and go,
Yeah,
do I have the light? Don't I have the light?
sure.
And that's where the request was, can we get a left-hand turn arrow so they know it's now safe to.
For them to
make that-
turn.
Oh, so you're saying if we move forward with the change in signals, we would look at that?
Well, it's a request that had been early in COVID.
Had come to
And
traffic
just
board.
been waiting because till
COVID had
traffic
hit.
volumes come back. Yeah, it was like
Traffic
pre-COVID.
pattern, traffic volume for.
And once
down
traffic volumes get back to
40%.
normal, then they actually do the test. Is there no volume? Yes, no, maybe.
Was that done or not yet?
It's really it's a traffic board item.
It's a traffic board item, but to your question is not yet because the volume hadn't returned to normal yet. Now, as you said, it's back to normal, so hopefully that'll at least be reviewed.
And then the last piece of mine, pink again, just the advanced detection, blue, Cochrane and Washington Road, just the APS upgrades for the pedestrians. And then the red is the APS upgrades and full detection upgrades at those intersections. Every one of the intersections of the business district is currently video detection. So again, you have the loops, the old stuff, video, which was newer than radar, and now you have a very much advanced radar. The rest of the municipality has radar detection. All the upgrades we've done recently of radar detection, Jason did a very good job over the years of updating and upgrading the radar. When PennDOT would come through with projects, he would insisted they put radar in with their project. So these 7 intersections do not have radar, they have video, but the video detectors that are there are now so outdated that the manufacturer does not support them
I
anymore.
see.
You can't get a replacement, you can't get parts for them, so as soon, yeah, as soon as one goes,
Yeah.
you're buying a
Replacement.
different camera that's from a different manufacturer that, you know, now you have mixed equipment at the signal. So we're proposing to update to be radar. That would be the rest of the municipality would have
So there,
42
Wow.
signals or whatever it is, would all have radar.
so
detection.
no signals would not have radar.
Correct. And in that case, we can actually spec a very specific product because all of the radar throughout the community, or it's called Wavetronics, is the manufacturer. Because it's more than 50% or 60%, then you can specify a specific manufacturer and type. Otherwise, it's I can't think of the word.
Exclusionary.
Yeah,
Approved equal.
yeah, or it could be an approved equal, which we don't want. So we'll have everything the same.
So could just, I,
Interesting.
this isn't, oh, this isn't the light.
Correct.
This is, we're talking about the push button or the device that the individual interacts with. And devices that are attached to the pole that are utilized to
Like the
detect
light.
vehicles
The,
that interact with the whole system.
yeah.
So if I rip out a pole and I put in a new pole, this all gets put on the new pole.
Correct. And if we were putting in a brand new signal at all of these intersections, this is the stuff we would put in. So just a touch on the costs. Again, it has a lot of stuff kind of built in there, but we've got it estimated right now like 612,000. So those 290,000 of that are from the state, and then 122,500 from the municipality. I would expect it to probably be more in the $500,000 to $550,000 range. So you're looking at $100,000 to $110,000 as a local match. It's a little bit of a slow moving program. And applications are being accepted until the end of January. They typically don't announce the award until November. So last year's applications, last year's projects were just announced in November. And then you got to go through a resolution process and an agreement process. So it'll be this time next year before you're under agreement and actually ready to start putting together specs and permitting and designing it. So the expense next year, it doesn't need to be in the budget because there really won't be one. And then from the final date on the agreement that everybody signs, you have 3 years to complete the project. So once, if you decide to enter into the agreement and get awarded the funds, then you kind of determine what you want to budget.
So we might not even find out about this until after we're done with 24 budget.
It's very possible. Yeah.
Wow.
It'll likely be November.
Late November, you're right, maybe. So, any more questions about the?
Yeah. You mentioned something, pedestrian detection, that was like in passing, is that a thing?
That's the APS.
Okay,
So-
that's the button,
so
but there's
yeah,
no
the tech-
cameras,
yeah.
radar for pedestrians, it's just the human pushing a button.
Correct.
Okay.
The vehicle detection has to be something that actually detects it, that
Yeah,
the vehicle doesn't have to touch. All the loops they go over and it would sense it. But it's push button is still technically detection. It's just actuated by the pedestrian.
And
got it.
am I not correct in saying the buttons that we have right now, while they work in the sense that if I walk up to one and push it, when the light changes, I will get my pedestrian light first before the cars get their green light. But it doesn't actually change the light to the red or green, or whichever way, until a car actually does it.
Well, it doesn't change the timing.
It doesn't change the timing.
Right.
So they're all set up to have maximum timing so that,
Yeah, oh yeah, so the
it's-
cars can
it's-
get through.
yeah, it's only gonna stay green for a
understand.
certain
We
amount
could
of time.
change,
But yeah, what you're called, it's called a leading pedestrian interval. So if you
That's what
push
I'm
the
trying to
button,
explain to you.
you push the button
Pedestrian.
across Washington Road, let's say right in front here of Dominios, you push the button, the walk signal will come up.
Yeah, before,
But-
which it should.
It'll still be a red signal, and that
Right.
walk signal is a 3-second leading pedestrian.
Yes, yeah.
3.
Without getting into these, as it gets the pedestrian into the crosswalk,
Yeah.
Mhm.
then the responsibility to yield to the pedestrian in the crosswalk is on the motorist. So when it goes green, they now have to yield.
Right.
When they used to turn at the same time,
Everyone's.
pedestrians would say, hey, you have to yield to me in the crosswalk. But the reality is you weren't not allowed to enter the crosswalk until it's safe to do so. The vehicle really had the right of way. So this leading pedestrian interval is now to actually physically get the
Right.
pedestrian into the crosswalk. That requires the yield. But yes, that has that through this business.
But we won't. Yeah, shut up.
Commissioner Rainey had a question about the timing. You were asking about the timing of the signals.
I think we got it. I think
Yeah.
I think he got it. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and there's only one pedestrian only crosswalk truly right now, right? That's the one in Cochrane, Washington.
Cochrane and Washington and Bower Hill and Washington.
Where it stops
Oh.
all the traffic.
Awesome.
And you can get across.
And those are hard to get, and
Yeah.
that's not a big fan of.
I know.
No, I know.
Not even in front of a hospital.
Well, from that.
For a million,
Well,
but that's different though.
Yeah, that's not a traffic signal, that's a.
Right.
I wish it was a traffic signal. I want it to be a traffic signal. That's a different car signal.
Any other questions for Mr. Hamer?
Thank you.
Now, at this point, you need some head nod from commission to proceed, or
I think it's just as long as you say to submit the application, we'll submit it. This stage doesn't require resolution or anything else. That comes with the
Later.
agreement.
I saw at least 3 thumbs up. So
Definitely.
yeah, it's all right.
Looks great. Thank you for all the work. Hard work.
Thank you.
That's good.
So, all right, next on the agenda, annual contracts and for Gateway only this time. I don't know. Yeah, it's not moving, so.
I'm coming. Yes, I am.
I had asked Dan to actually go through this with the commission, really partially for the benefit of Commissioner Slaughter Wilson. Because the municipality has a number of contracts that we award on an annual basis. And it's always good to get an overview of those before you actually see them on the agendas that will be
Yeah.
coming up.
Great.
Not as exciting as traffic signals. But we'll talk about sewers.
Jason's left, so you can go write me some
Yeah.
tickets. No, you just.
Love the camera. No.
Okay, so what I want to go over tonight is our annual contracts and things that you'll see coming up in the next couple of months. Just as a quick agenda here, we'll talk about contract renewals and then these are all the various contracts that we do each year to maintain the system or do some improvements to the system. So just as background, in the Alcoasand service area, as a part of the consent order, we were required to implement a long-term maintenance of our system, O&M responsibilities each year. That's a part of the consent order. So our recommendation back when we started this, and really Mount Lebanon has the size. We're fortunate here that we can put out our own contracts and actually have, we don't need to be in Shaycog's contract because we can more efficiently manage with our own contracts and get more work done, control those contracts and keep things moving along. And I think it's worked out pretty well. So we're mature in this system where we are right now. So we've gotten contracts from various years on all these different contracts. This year, it's really just the lining and the root treatment need to be bid. And these bids will include options for additional years at the municipality's discretion. That's another adjustment that I made as we were moving through this. Why go through this every year? Bid each contract out. It does make sense, at least for a couple years, to keep the same contractor on for various reasons, and you get you have the option to keep them or not keep them. But most of the time, we're recommending to keep them because they're incentivized to do their work. They give us a fixed price that we know what it's going to be, and they have a familiarity with the community. You're not training new contractors every time you do it. So there's a lot of benefits to it. And they're really not heavily dependent upon material costs. Although this year we do expect the lining cost to go up just because of the cost of the resins that have increased in fee. So the first contract is the just cleaning and televising. We just go out every year. We do 10% of the system. We have a 150 mile, roughly 150 mile system. So we're doing about 15 miles of just going in, opening up the manholes, flushing the sewers, making sure they're clean, and then they do televising. We do bring all of that information back into the GIS system now. So we are keeping all our records in one place. The videos are up to the cloud. This is really, a lot of things have changed in terms of the data processing in this, which is good. We originally bid this contract in 22. We have potential renewers this year and next year. Our next bid cycle's in 2025. So we will be recommending a renewal of this contract to Roto-Rooter. Any questions on this one?
These, I mean, obviously, these aren't laterals. You're only doing the sewer mains.
Correct. We're only
Right.
doing our main lines.
I assume, but
Yeah, I mean, we will look at where the laterals enter our soil
Sure.
if there's any issues, but other than that, no. The next project that we bid is the sanitary and storm sewer point repair, sort of a blanket contract for any sort of repairs that we would need to the storm or the sanitary sewer system throughout the contract year. This is a good contract because it has everything we need. We have unit prices on it. When an emergency arises or something like that, we can have the contractor quickly mobilize. We know what our prices are. We pay them a mobilization, but we get the work done quickly and efficiently, and it's worked out pretty well. The original contract here on this one was 2/22, so we will again be looking at a renewal. The contractors in the Endo Construction, they're very good at what they do, and we're going to recommend them moving on with the contract for next year.
Dan, I know you put these both together, which is what we do now, but initially when we put the fee in place for the sanitary, I think that was maybe part of one of the original consent orders. We had a much higher number in terms of the cost of those point repairs.
Oh, yeah, a good point. So and again, as you go through a system, we've already been through the first 10-year cycle with the consent order. The repairs are sort of designated based upon a level 4, a level 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we went through and we've made all the biggest repairs to the system, the worst repairs to the
Right.
system. So we're really down to just, really, it's like raising manholes or more of what we're doing this year, and then just addressing any miscellaneous repairs that may have occurred from the previous year's TVing that we might see that goes on. So Keith's right, the cost of this contract and the amount of point repairs that we do are much less and less. And we've also taken advantage of the lining of the sewers. So if we do a point repair and it makes sense, we'll just line it from end to end.
sure,
We have a new pipe.
sure.
You don't have to rip up anybody's backyard anymore. So again, it's very efficient. The next one is the chemical root treatment contract. So we do have roots that intrude into the old vitrified clay pipes because the pipes are only 3-foot sections of pipe. And typically in certain areas, we know where the roots cause problems. They can cause backups. We've worked with an EPA registered herbicide that only kills the roots in the sewers. It doesn't harm the trees. We have to do an initial application, and then we do another application in 2 years. And then after the 2 years, it's completed every 3 years. So this contract was bid in 2019. We're going to need to rebid it this year. Dukes has been the company that specializes in this. We don't get a whole lot of competitive bidding in this, but the price is pretty consistent. It's not crazy. It's a really good proactive way to maintain your system, such a route doesn't have to have guys out there in the middle of the night trying to open up sewers and clog roots. When we first started this, I mean, we just had,
Yeah,
it was crazy.
it was frequent. Yeah,
Yeah.
there would be out on emergency calls. It's really.
So you don't even have to bore, do you have to bore them out at this
No.
point? You just use the chemicals?
just
That's
slop
pretty
off.
cool.
Yeah, the chemical
Yeah.
kills the roots and then it just sloughs off and goes down the sewer.
Yeah.
It's a good maintenance activity. And when you use the hydraulic equipment, you're somewhat damaging the pipe. as
Oh,
well.
yeah, I was gonna
This
say,
won't
yeah.
damage the pipe because it's
Yeah.
chemically treating the roots.
What's the new pipe material? Are you using a new
PVC.
PVC?
Yeah.
I figured looking at the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Since it's been a couple of years now, are we able to watch to see that if the health of the tree is impacted? I know that's probably an.
We haven't seen
Yeah, we haven't seen it. We do it consistently in the same areas because we know.
Same kind of
It's a
Problematic.
contact herbicide, not systemic, so it kind of burns
Just
the
those
roots off.
roots,
Yeah,
hopefully doesn't absorb by the.
Correct. correct, yeah.
And once we line, do we have to go back and root treat in those sections still?
No,
Are we lining all the pipes that we chemically treat?
if they need repaired, we will.
There's a warranty on that work for the chemical, so if the roots come back and we experience a root blockage, they'll come back and treat for free. And we track those. If we have multiple or chronic issues with roots, we put it on the lining list and then we line the complete segment. to
Oh,
eliminate
I
any
see. Oh,
root.
that's good. I get it.
I hadn't
That's
thought,
that's the process we follow.
I hadn't thought about this till now, but do we get more I after we treat the roots?
We would not really determine that, yeah. I mean, we're trying to be selective with aligning now, because again, we're trying to make it work for the consent order.
Yeah.
And that's our biggest tool in the tool belt, so. When we first started lining, it was more about point repairs, now it's about infiltration. We also do, manhole rehabilitation. You can see in these pictures here, this is an old brick manhole. Most of our manholes are brick. We go in and apply a cementatious coating. This is called the invert of the sewer. We actually go in and improve the invert. We put steps in, so when the guys do have to get in the sewers, that they can safely enter them. So this has been a very successful project. We've just kind of incrementally moved through the municipality, and we're doing, a certain number of manholes that kind of are realistically can be done each year by the contractor. So this project was, original contract year was 2021. And we have it to be available to renew this year. We're going to recommend that. The company is Robinson Pipe.
And that's the whole thing, all the way down.
Yes. And if it needs a new casting, we'll have that done under the point repair contract. It's a different contract. These guys just completely seal them. That's their job.
What was the material you mentioned? I wasn't familiar with it.
It's just a cementatious
Okay,
coating.
like a cement
They will go
coating.
in and actually spray and trowel the material in, that it gets into the joints.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Interesting.
It's effective.
Where does this fall in the budget, Keith? Does this?
It's all under the sewer
It
fund.
is under.
Yeah, it's all under-
Under sewer.
So this is not like,
Doesn't come out of the general fund.
yeah, okay.
We also maintain backwater valves. Unfortunately, we do still have in certain low-lying areas, a number of chronic areas that potentially could back up, given a storm event. So we started, installing backwater valves. We pretty much, from time to time, we might still install a new one, but it's pretty infrequent now. So what we do is we have the contractor come in each year, and the municipality, as a part of the backwater valve installation, maintains it. So generally, we just have a contractor come in, they check the valve, make sure it's still operational, lubricated or whatever it needs. And then they give us a report back on that, so that we know that if there is a malfunction on a backwater valve, that it has been checked, and there might be some other reason that it didn't happen. But a backwater valve is basically a valve that flips down. It only operates when the sewage comes out of the house, it opens up,
Yeah.
it flaps down otherwise. So if there is
So
an
it
event,
can't come back in.
so there is an event in the main line, that it can't come
Can't come
back
back
into
in.
the hump. So this again has been pretty successful program. We don't have nearly the call outs that we did on basement floodings and other stuff like that, and it is being accepted by the health department. I mean, ultimately, they would like us not to have any of these, and all our sewers to be capable of dealing with any type of storm in any event, but the reality is that, we won't be there for a while, so we'll continue to do this.
Interesting.
And then the annual lining contract, this is the where we actually create a new pipe within the existing pipe, which acts as a host. So we use a CIPP lining, we call it. It is a polyethylene type of material that comes as sort of like a bag. They insert the bag in the sewer and they use either hot water, steam, or ultraviolet light. In some cases, they use to cure the new liner within the pipe. Again, we've used it. I'd say I had statistics on this. I don't have it right off the top of my head, but I know we're over 15% line now in the system.
20%.
20%, which would be 30 miles of this 150 miles is already lined. So we continue to do that. We're going to do a lot more of that type of work within the consent order. This is the only project that we do bid annually. And the reason we do it and not as is this year to year, the location of it changes. We had contractors that complained that they didn't like to be taken all over the place. They wanted a specific plan that they could bid. So we do bid the work each year. We're developing that contract right now. So you'll see a new bid in for the work. We do expect that prices will go up on this based on some bids. We took in Upper St. Clair in November. Those prices went up there. They were at least 20% higher because of the resin and other things involved in that.
Whatever supplies.
What's the,
Okay, good.
I was gonna say, what's the expected life of? this?
PVC pipes, I've seen literature that they're at least 50 years, if not longer. There's really nothing, you can't do anything to a PVC, you can't do anything to PVC with anything you put in the sewer system will not harm it. It's totally innocuous to, anything you dump down the sewer,
Yeah.
bleach, whatever it might be. The only time I've ever seen a PVC pipe damaged was when a steam line ran over top of it, melted it.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Sure.
So that's the only thing, I've never, you can obviously break them they're easier to
Yeah.
break than the old.
But even the CIPP,
Liner.
Yeah,
the lining, that's still same kind of,
it's PVC.
it is. PVC.
Yeah, so what you do is you go inside and they apply a resin and they apply steam and that sort of it cures the bag.
PVC in place
Yeah.
as opposed to installing it. I guess my question then is, so 50 years from now, right?
It's gonna cost to replace. the
Yeah, we've got to be, this has to be on the radar that
Well, not yet.
it's going to be time to
I'll be
start
dead.
replacing. Yeah, well, that's always the thought, right?
My question was, so we lose a certain amount of diameter with this, which then will affect the flow and we have a certain, but if we're talking about 50 years before we need to, because can you do this twice?
I'm sure they will be able to do it at some point twice. I've never seen anybody do it twice now. There'll be some other technology that'll come about in 50 years that will deal with it. But I mean, just our sewers are nominal 8-inch diameter minimum. And they're that minimum because the tools that we need to maintain them, they need to be that diameter. You can carry over 700 houses in an 8-inch line at a 1% grade. So you can carry a lot of sewage flow in an 8-inch pipe. Maybe not in a rainstorm, but I mean, until we get some of this water out of the system, but they do carry a lot of flow.
Even with the PVC, I mean, obviously with this, there's less drag as you can look,
Correct.
This, broke up, clearly water's slowing down, so you get a nice smooth surface there.
Yeah.
Even though it's narrower.
Yeah.
There's less friction.
Yeah, pipe capacity does increase. If you decrease the friction in the pipe, it increases the capacity.
Sure.
So we've done 20% of our pipes so far. That's impressive. In just how many years?
Probably 15.
Well, I mean, we had a few lines back in the probably 80s, but probably seriously since early 2000s. So last 20 years.
Yeah.
I've gotten a couple complaints from residents about the odor, but it just really seems like a one-off thing. Any thoughts on that?
We from time to time, we had an issue on one particular one. Most of the time there's a problem is that people don't put water in their traps. And the odor from the main line comes back into the, or somebody might not have a trap on their house. Believe it or not, some houses don't have traps. We did run into that one time. So we did try to implement when we do the TV and the pre work that we do, we try to make sure that we don't have any of those issues.
Did you contact the residents? How do you make sure?
There's been, even in the cases where we did have that issue a couple of years ago with the odor, there was a letter that went out ahead of time and gave instructions.
Oh, yeah.
When we're doing it, what you might see, where we're gonna be. So it was pretty well called out. I
We've
think.
expanded who gets those letters now.
Okay, good, yeah.
Okay.
Smart.
Sort of go beyond the point where you're finding, right, because it is possible to go through the travel.
Sure.
Pipe, obviously,
Yeah.
and make it into the house. We put additional information on the website as well.
Yeah.
So
Even when we had that problem, I saw the letter that went out. I thought it was pretty good. And even then it was issue with the residents' house.
Yeah, I mean,
Which
it's,
is-
you can't. So you do it, it's always lessons learned. You keep trying to improve the
Sure.
process. And I think, with Public Works and our office, we're constantly trying to do anything that we can do to improve our processes. That's always the goal.
Any other questions? Good. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the presentation. Next, on our agenda is municipal podcasts. Laura and Ian are coming up.
I think we'll have one on sewers.
They're looking for suggestions.
Well, I'm interested in sewers, obviously. Yes, and. No, sewers, right? So interesting.
One on storm and one on sanitary.
One on storm and one on sanitary, and why laterals do leak. Sorry.
Okay, while Ian's getting set it up here, I want to thank you for giving us this opportunity to come in and talk to you about our podcast. As you know, our office is always trying to find out.
Sorry.
Nothing worse than hearing your own voice feedback. We're always trying to find out how people want to be communicated with and meeting them where they are. So the podcast is another way to do that. It started with Ian. When Ian first came to work here, he told us about a Steelers podcast he had and how fun they were and how much engagement he got on them. So we started thinking about it. We started researching other governments that had podcasts and seeing what they were doing. It also came up in our 2019 communications study as something we could consider. Truly, our only roadblock was just having somebody to do it and having time to do it, because certainly Ian's very busy and our staff was also pretty busy. But we hired Carrie Monyo as a content creator when Stephanie was promoted into Katie's position. So we had the assistant public information officer left, Stephanie got promoted, and Carrie was hired. And Carrie is an Emmy-winning producer. She's worked at PXI and KDK TV with extensive experience and recording multimedia, and she has just been fantastic. So the way it worked is Carrie and Stephanie and Ian got together and brainstormed the way this was going to work. They came up with a twice monthly schedule. And in 2022, they produced 10 podcasts. And the analytics that we have, it's a minimum of 3,000 downloads and listens. It's more than that because some of the services we can't track. Like we can't track how much it's on iHeartRadio. We can't track how much it's on Spotify. Some of them we can. So that 3,000 is a bare minimum. But Carrie was able to get this podcast launched on all of the major podcast services. Podbean, Apple, YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, you name it. And there's more developing every day. And she's kind of got her finger on that pulse as to where we need to be. So people can listen to it on our website and they can download it. So it depends on how people want to listen to it. We're making that happen. So so far the most popular one is about leaf pickup, followed by the podcast that announced the library was great. They allowed us to be the source to announce Colson Whitehead coming to the speaker series. So that kind of created some suspense and some excitement. So other topics have included snow removal, the budget, how we fill a commission vacancy and who we fill the commission vacancy with. So it's been exciting. And right now Stephanie's on maternity leave, so I'm filling in poorly. It's my radio days are. Anyway, but we're looking for some good ideas. We also would like to play a little bit for you so you can get a sense for what they sound like. We know you're busy, didn't know if you had a chance to listen to them. So we thought we would.
Star.
Yeah, twice.
Yes. Snow removal is the up and coming one, so.
Yeah, I only listen to the leaf removal.
Let's see if the
Yeah, you might want to.
No, because it's not the speakers. If I play this, I'm through Zoom. There's a way to do it where your audio from your computer broadcasts through Zoom and not back at you. I'm not sure. Hold on. Sorry.
Anything Laura wants to talk about, what you guys trying to solve this
I'll figure
technical
this
issue?
out.
I still got the mediation one on my phone.
Yeah, no, so I mean, you can kind of see up here some of the topics that we've covered. Municipal staff has been great about, being guests on the show. We've tried to kind of keep them around the sort of 15 to 20-minute time frame. When we first conceptualized it, the idea was that you could listen to it on a T ride downtown, although obviously we have more people working from home now and, listen to podcasts at any time of day, but we figured 15 to 20 minutes was a pretty good time frame to have a nice conversation, but also and be informative while also not taking too much time. But also these podcasts will also just be a future resource as we transition to the new website. We can link them from, the page on Public Works, if you don't want to read about how leaf collection works, here, listen to a 15-minute podcast on how leaf collection works. Here's a 20-minute one on snow removal, so on and so forth. So. Just trying to. Yes.
What if you go back to them?
Let's try this. There. Says it's playing, but there is no audio.
There's,
Yeah, that plays over my computer. Oh, well, okay, people can go on and listen.
Or you can play from your phone now.
on the share.
Yeah.
The Zoom share thing, see if there's something that says share sound. On the app, like you might put the app.
Yeah. There's sound, there we go. Aha, thank you. Let's try this.
So I'm Assistant Municipal Manager and Municipal Planner Ian McMeans.
And I'm Assistant Public Information Officer and Online Editor Stephanie Hackey.
Our guest today is actually our first two-time guest on the show. Welcome back to Public Works Director Rudy Sukel. A few weeks ago, you were on the show and talked about leaf collection. And now that most of the leaves have fallen and we're transitioning into the other four-letter word happening, which is snow, you're back to talk about how snow removal works in Mount Lebanon.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
Absolutely. So this is one of the many jobs that Public Works handles, correct? You do the
Correct.
leaf collection, you do a lot of other things in the community, but snow is probably what you're most known for, right?
It's a very high priority, yes. We take a lot of pride in our snow and ice control programs, and it all revolves around safety and safe travel in the community. So yeah, it's very important.
Absolutely. Now, what is the process for clearing the roads from snow and
Well,
ice as well?
Yeah, it depends on the weather conditions and how much snow we receive. Anything up to around an inch and over, we start plowing the streets, and that takes more time because we have to go in both directions, typically 2 or 3 passes on each side of the street, and clear the snow off before we're able to put control products down, ice melters, salts, and those type of things. So if it's less than an inch, 3/4 of an inch, it's typically we will run through the community and just salt the streets, and that typically takes about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours for the crews to clear the whole community.
That's a question I've always had, is how do they choose between plowing and salting?
Depends on the conditions, and it depends on how much snow is actually on the road. As I said, and the temperatures have a lot to do with it too.
Right.
But if there's more than 3/4 to an inch of snow, we do drop the plows and we have to clear that off because the salt is just not effective. And salt has to have traffic as well in order for it to mix up, start to break down, and start to de-ice the streets.
Interesting. So how many snow plows do we have and how are the routes set up throughout the community?
We have, when we respond for snow and ice, a typical response is 9 trucks. We have 3 larger trucks that service the main road routes that we have, and we have 6 trucks that service the residential streets, side streets, alleys, and those type of things. The 3 larger trucks are based on geography, and all of it revolves basically around the location of the Public Works facility because that's where the salt's stored. So that's our only salt storage area. All the trucks have to load up there. They have to come back for loads. Our routes are based on, for the most part, lane miles. Each truck covers about 25 lane miles with each route. The main roads cover a little more because they have 4-lane roads within their routes. Washington Road is a name of one of our routes. Gilkison is another route, and Bower Hill is another route. So we have 3 different routes that we run with the main roads, and then we also have north, south, east, west, central, and northwest routes. So those are the 6 routes that we run with small trucks. It's all based on geography and time.
Gotcha. So, yeah, like you said, with lane miles, with Washington Road being a 4 or 5 lane road in some parts of the community, it basically takes twice as long to do that as it does a residential street, which is just 2 lanes.
It can, especially if we're plowing. But what we'll do too is we'll team up when we do what's called tandem plowing, where all the trucks get together and they plow the entire side of the street in one pass. So they overlap their plow widths, and it's like a train going down the street, and they push all the snow off in one pass, 1 or 2 passes. So that's more efficient than one person going back and forth and creating a pile of snow in the middle of the road, in the middle of a 4-lane road that traffic then has to deal with, because you have to start in the center and work your way out.
Right. Yeah. Because. Okay. So just a little sample of our
How
all-star
fascinating
contributor.
snow removal really is.
Yes. Yes. And our goal is to have these little snippets out there that people can listen to at any time to be more of an informational resource to folks. And the leaf collection, the snow removal, all these topics are things that often we have had in commission discussion sessions in the past, and sometimes reiterated when new commissioners come on and things like that. So this can be a resource not only for our residents to go learn about how some municipal services work, but for new commissioners who all have very busy lives, may not have time to read through the giant binder that you get when you become a new commissioner, can go listen to a few podcasts and learn about some municipal services as well. So it is intended to be a resource for everyone in the community. And we're very excited about the amount of interaction we've had so far, and we're excited to kind of see where it goes in the future.
Monday's interview subject is our new police chief, Jason Haberman. So he will be telling us a little bit about himself and what he plans for the department. We also do have one planned for, as we talked about, storm sewers and sanitary sewers. And outreach, we will be doing one on outreach and the services that they provide. So
Good.
those are just some of the things.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
So we're happy to take your ideas if you have
Animal
suggestions for
control.
them.
Do animal control. Definitely.
Else, ideas?
What do you get a lot of questions about?
Trees.
Yeah.
Tree trimming process.
Tree trimming, yeah.
Street trees, park trees, health of trees, life of trees, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Or like just the process, how do I get my tree trimmed? The street tree trimmed.
How do I get the tree across the street from me in the park that's dead, taken out? That's a big one, that kind of thing. You're on again.
I get traffic, like, why can't we pull people over for going so fast near the schools or down my street? They're going 30 down my street, how come we can't pull them over and take it up?
Why are the go zones always a disaster?
Yes,
Scott Green.
Yes. Yeah. So these are great ideas, and it's always
Traffic requests.
yeah.
traffic
Process.
process.
Yeah.
And then like the other side of that is pedestrian safety. People complain about the traffic, which I agree with, but they're not necessarily complaining because they're stuck in their vehicle waiting for, it takes longer to get across town. What they really are complaining about is it doesn't feel safe to walk here. I'm worried about my kid walking to school, pedestrian safety. They don't care that the car's going 35, they just don't want their kid to get hit, which.
I run red lights, but I don't speed.
She's committed.
Again, you are being recorded. Bill, I think you just have to give her parental rights or something.
Your chief is sitting back there.
I know. I already admitted it to him.
Well, if anything occurs to you, please feel free to drop us a line. We will look into it and we'll continue to expand it. I think it's a good program.
People care about townhomes too.
Oh, you really want to open up.
So maybe the municipal planner can do project updates.
Project updates and develop.
We're approving developments.
Process for. Yeah.
Process.
What municipalities can and can't do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be. Yeah.
Should.
Yeah, we do get that a lot too in our office too. You know, we need a blank. Why is there
Blank.
a blank here?
Yes.
The other things would be permitting. I mean, I know that sounds boring, but how many times have I
Seriously,
gone on like Inside Lebo and said, you know, by the way, you do need a permit for putting in a fence. Seems to be like a perennial question. What do I need a permit for?
how do I get a permit? Yeah.
There you go.
How does my Lebo work?
That may be a good how-to,
How-to,
Lebo.
Lebo.
And one of the other things that I should say, the Public Information Office, has been working through, now that we have some more, with bringing on Carrie, some more multimedia, functions, is sort of what's the best way to distribute certain kinds of information. So podcast being audio only versus, the how-to Lebos, which are like the quick little, like 2-minute videos on how to do something. Like we did the one on how to use the new parking meter app that Andrew McCreary did, which was pretty well received. So things that involve a visual component, the how-to Lebos have been a nice way to do that, versus the podcast, which is sometimes more just a, you know, if you need to see something,
Right.
the video is sometimes better than audio only, but there's different ways to reach people. And I think we've been, you know, kind of exploring those different ways and working to figure out which topics are best suited for which type of information.
And it's inexpensive. I mean, for the podcast, we had a Best Buy sale and got all of our equipment for a couple $100s. We had, you know, enough to have guests, and she has a little mixing board and she can do editing and, you know, we could have done it before without editing, but you know, again, we're not radio professionals. Sometimes we stumble and wanna, you know, yeah. I had the Fair Housing Act adopted in 1948 instead of 1968, actually. So we like to have accurate information,
Yeah.
so. it's good
Well,
to
the
have that.
Historical Society would be another one that would be really fun to just
Oh, yeah, highlights.
highlights. Yeah, they really have some interesting things.
And each time they have a new exhibit.
Yeah.
Okay, they can talk
Very
about it. Now
interesting.
we have. whatever.
Could do one for the partnership. A lot of people don't understand what the partnership is.
Oh, yeah.
That was on the
that's a
tip,
good one, too. Yeah.
And then kind of maybe I saw that you did the community relations board and mediation, but there might be something that each of our boards has. to
Especially with the
offer.
board consolidation, maybe that'd be a good
Exactly.
time to go through each of the new ones. and
Do we
describe it.
have
Yeah.
do we have a list, like if, I know we don't get their information necessarily, if you subscribe on Spotify or whatever, but do we have any kind of information of people who subscribe?
I'll have to ask Carrie. I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get that.
It's like, we could just ask.
Yeah.
You know, what do you want to hear next?
But I think this also it reflects very well on Laura and her staff in terms of embracing some of what we heard through the communication study that we did and getting away from the traditional method of, I'll say, government communication, where we just used to just simply push information out, right? We just kind of put it out there with no thought or regard for how do people want to receive that information. So we've kind of shifted that dynamic a little bit now and said, hey, what are some other ways that we can do this, and how do people want to get some of this stuff?
Anyone else?
Anything else? Anybody can ask questions?
I love it. I'm just so impressed. It's so cool.
They are fun to listen to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I also hit up a former colleague of mine at, he's now at iHeartRadio for the introduction, because he's an actual natural radio person with an actual radio voice. So,
You guys sound like naturals. Really.
Yeah, we like to have it sort of fun and conversational and informative. So I think that's kind of the niche we're working towards, is the conversational but informative niche.
and we appreciate all the staff, you know, I know that's, you know, can be nerve wracking, and I know they don't necessarily like to, but they've been great, so we appreciate their cooperation. Thanks, Rudy.
Right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura.
All right.
You have free time. I don't know if you want to go around.
Well, I was
Boards
gonna
and
next
authorities
is boards and authorities. If anybody has something they want to talk about for their boards.
Yeah, I got some.
I didn't meet in December.
Commissioner Grella, why don't you go first?
So the school board has contracted with a firm to help them with their superintendent search, and they are holding community town hall sessions. So there are going to be 2 or 3 of them in person, January 18th at 9 a.m. and at 7 p.m. And that's in the Fine Arts Theater at the high school. And then they have a 3rd session, which will be on Zoom, and that's January 19th at 7 p.m. They have the information, the Zoom link, and all those times posted on their website. There was also an email sent around to, or a letter, sorry, sent around to school presidents. So they have a community stakeholder survey up. Again, you can get this information on the school board website that is soliciting some feedback about the process and, you know, who they want to take that position. So again, you can find that information on the school board website. See if I can get a link for us to it. You know, but yeah.
Yeah, Ian and I both received an email today. They're doing a series of, I'll say focus groups.
Mhm.
So we got an invitation for that. I think it's 17th at 2 p.m. Yeah. There was a link to the survey as well as part of that. So
Great.
shared that with Laura, so we'll push the link out for her.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, cool. Yeah, appreciate it.
There's multiple. I think that was for ours, it was targeted to.
Correct. Government.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the Sports Advisory Board met this month already, and they created their work plan for the, but they expanded it to be a 15-month work plan, being cognizant. Sorry, that's okay, being cognizant that their board will only exist for about 15 months. So for the next 15 months, they are going to continue to work on their annual prioritization for our capital improvement plan and for our budget, like they did last year. They submitted their list of prioritizations. And they were very pleased, by the way, about how many things were funded that were recreation, parks, and sports related in last year's budget. They said that was the most that anyone's really ever seen and the most kind of attention. And they're really like the lineup with what the Parks and Rec Master Plan has kind of that roadmap format has given us, as well as their prioritization kind of fed into the capital improvement plan. So they're going to continue to kind of do that again this year like they did last year. And they're going to work with the Parks Advisory Board and municipal staff to assist in our master planning for Main Park and any assistance that we'd like on the recreation architecture study.
Main Park Strategic Plan and Architectural.
Yes, that one. So whenever that's kicking off, I know I told them no time soon, but whenever that's kicking off, they'll have a small group of people that can provide input and support. They always work on selling and promoting recreational advertising and giving opportunities to our rec department for that. That's like the banners and things that go up at the ball fields and hockey rinks. They help sort of sell things for revenue for us. They continue to address issues that citizens bring to their boards. And they will complete the field survey and provide a report back to the commission and all the stakeholders, as well as pursue recommendations developed from that survey. They will also continue to assist with the comp plan as needed and as invited. And the big kind of project that we'll see this year is they're moving forward on the signage as wayfinding. That's under Laura Pace Lilly with Public Works and Rec Department. And they were asked to kind of go ahead and do an audit of the existing signs and make recommendations on where we need signs. And they did that. They took that to the board's meeting and they have something to kind of send over now after people sort of approved and had some time to look through it. So they're moving forward on helping the designer with that, by giving input on where signs are needed or suggestions for that. So this is not the manufacturing of any signs. This is, we're talking about this design. They're on that piece.
Kalana's gonna do the design.
Kalana's gonna do the
Going back to
design,
Solana.
just like they did already for
Historic preservation.
Yeah,
Yeah, which.
same thing.
Put a couple
like,
of them up, right?
This kind
And
of
one had already
sign,
been stolen.
design, I thought.
Yes.
Knocked down and
But-
stolen. Yeah, okay. It
Cheaper.
wasn't me.
Thank you. Any other commissioners want to?
Parks met. I wasn't able to stay for the whole meeting because we had our organization meeting.
Oh.
But they are working on their priorities for the year. Seemed like a great meeting, great group. I was very impressed.
Good.
And Connect is very active, ramping up a very busy year, doing a lot of climate action plan, preparing with SPC.
Nice.
Partnering with SPC to try to do more there. The law enforcement assisted diversion, they are now in their eastern cohort, so eastern Pittsburgh region. They are active. They've had 8 diversions from the police in that region. So when they have a diversion, it means there is a caseworker who is taking on a person that has been picked up, or diverted by police who are problem individuals, and supporting this person. So taking them to doctors, being on the phone, they're actually given a phone, to be in contact with this person. So that is ramping up. And they are starting the northern cohort. And they said that our new police chief has been actively engaged in conversations. They really liked working with him. They're looking forward to having further conversations when that day arrives, but they're very happy with the progress. I actually had a conversation with them about our work with outreach, and how we're doing things, and there seems like some interesting synergies. Yeah, not in the specific programs, right? There's obvious differences, but in the overall philosophy. So looks like there's some interesting discussions there. So Connect is very busy. Obviously, as I said before, we're looking to roll out of Pitt and expand the relationships with other universities. So it is going to not be a organization housed at Pitt anymore. It is going to be with the Community Foundation of the Alleghenies as the fiscal sponsor. So that we can really kind of expand the footprint and be more strategic about how dollars are spent. Because there's a lot of grant money. And we want to make sure that we're utilizing it as effectively as possible as an organization. So we're really focusing Connect on how do we understand the organization as a incubator for municipal innovation. And so a lot of work is happening, a lot of ramping up for this upcoming year.
Very nice. CRB meets tomorrow night
Good.
and the library meets next Wednesday.
Okay, outreach met and again, very appreciative of the funding they received from the municipality. They are working on their fundraising gala. They're looking for sponsors. And so, Commissioner Swagger Wilson will be there next couple of meetings. And they're looking forward to your networking list. Because you're very connected and they're looking for additional sponsors for the gala. So, yes, so anyway, and traffic, you obviously heard the update.
When's their fundraiser, you know?
Say again?
Do they have a date for their fundraiser?
I believe it's early May.
Really May.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. And that's what I have. So anything else? Not, we'll adjourn and see you in the big room at 8 o'clock.
So,
Yeah.
good start, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
No one wants to leave.